I'm Bree Luck, and you are listening to the Pause to Go podcast, where we explore the process of turning life's transitions into stellar transformations. You can expect interviews with experts, straight talk with remarkable humans, and conversations about making the most of every phase of life. Because when we approach life's stickiest spots with curiosity, support, and a little bit of inspiration, anything is possible. So whether you're on your way to work or settling in with your favorite beverage, together we can pause to go. As a solopreneur, I really like the flexibility to work from pretty much anywhere, so I'm happy to head down to code-based co-working, where I can enjoy the company of others while I tackle my to-do list. Also, they have a state-of-the-art, consumer-friendly podcasting studio that is frankly my home away from home. So head over to Code-Based Co-working, check it out, and when you do, tell them that Bree sent you. I have a little story about identity. So a few years ago, I left a very public position in my community to take a job in another city. And although I never actually moved to that city, I was largely out of the public eye in my town. And now, more than 3 years later, I still run into people around town who hesitate when they see me. And then they say something like, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing here? When did you move back?" I mean, it's actually become a bit of a running joke with my family. Like, how many times did somebody ask you when you moved back today? But the moment that really gets me about those interactions centers around identity. Because part of the reason they think I've moved, or that there's even a moment of hesitation, that moment of hesitation before they make the remark, is because there's a social identity that has shifted. And that feels uncomfortable. People just don't know what to do with that. And it would be really easy to feel anxious about that moment of hesitation because it is just about enough time for the dark thoughts to emerge. You know, the thoughts that like, these people don't like me, or they're angry with me for something I can't remember that I did. But really the most likely scenario is that there's a simple identity misplacement. Because before, I was known as X, and who I am now doesn't really fit with that. It's a mini crisis of identity, and that's actually a subtle reason that a lot of people don't make transformative decisions in their lives. Because it is freaking scary to embrace a new identity. Taking a new job, or ending a relationship, or having a kid is hard, not only because of the facts of that change, but also because we sort of know where we stand with our current identity, and it can feel really daunting to grapple with the unknown. Who am I in this new paradigm? Am I still me? And on a deeper level, will I be safe? Making bold moves is more than about doing a thing. It is an act of courage. And if you are in the midst of that courageous act right now, or you're just thinking about it, or even just trying to figure out how to respond to, "Didn't you move?" I've got you. Seriously, DM me. Because I've got to be honest. I loved my old identity. But this evolving version is so much healthier. And that's what I want for you. And speaking of health, today I'm talking to Dr. Orlena Kerek, who trained as a pediatric doctor in the UK and now lives in Spain with her husband and 4 kids. And she's a health coach for women in her 40s and 50s. She has a great podcast, Fit and Fabulous at 40 and Beyond. I'm going to link it in the show notes. And her book, Building Simple Habits to a Healthy Me, is really, really great. It has some memoir, some science, and a lot of practical implementation that you can use immediately. Really, really fabulous. And one of the things that came up in our conversation is that Dr. Orlena started her current career when a move to Spain with 4 kids under the age of 4.5, God bless her, led to a sort of an identity crisis that was a catalyst for her professional shift in focus. Also in this episode, Dr. Orlena explains her 4 pillars of health, and she offers some great steps for cultivating a healthier life on your own terms. I really enjoyed getting to know her, and I think you will too. Enjoy the episode. I was so excited to come across your materials, not only because I think that you're doing really great work, but also because you live in a part of Spain that is a dream come true.
It's a dream come true for us as well. And the thing about dreams coming true is that they become real life and your brain adapts to it. And you have to go around poking yourself and going, is this a dream or is this real life? And you have to remind yourself as well, like, I'm living my most amazing life. I have to say, I don't mean, I've got a super yacht and stuff like that. I mean, I walk by the sea and go swimming in the sea and I walk in the woods and all of these amazing things.
Dr. Orlena lives on the Costa Brava in Spain. You have such an interesting story of how you turned to health and wellness coaching. And because you started your career by studying pediatric medicine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I studied in England. We have a different system from the UK. So you go and you study medicine. So we don't do pre-med and then medicine. You just go to university, you study medicine. So actually I studied adult medicine and did about 1 term of children's medicine. And the reason I laugh at this is because kids are very, very different from adults. So when I finished my training, we start work at what we affectionately call house plants. Like you're the youngest doctor. Their real name is house officer. But, I always remember being called a house plant. And then after my year or so as adults, I went off to Australia. And that's really where I meandered into pediatrics. And I loved pediatrics so much. Like kids bounce, they get really, really sick, and then they get really, really well, which is not what happens to adults. A lot of adult medicine is that sad decline of later ages. And now with my health coach hat on, I'm like, oh my goodness, so much of that can be avoided. Obviously you can't prevent people from getting old, but you can really maximize your later years by leading a healthy life right now. It has to start now.
When is now?
Like right now for anybody who's listening. Don't leave it a moment later, because a moment later, it never happens. People always go, oh, and I can understand why. I always talk about when I see myself in the hospitals and looking around the adult wards and thinking, if only I could take people back 20 years, they wouldn't be here. If I could teach them how to lead a healthy life, those people, they wouldn't be here. So you're standing here making that decision right now. And yet people don't make that decision. They never make that decision. They leave it for all kinds of reasons. One of them being habits, one of them being essentially, this is the way society lives life. And another reason being, well, we put it off for, I'm fine now. I don't see what's going to happen to me in 20 years' time. But, it's a bit like brushing your teeth. We know that if you brush your teeth, you're far more likely to have healthy teeth and you don't need to go to the dentist and you don't need to have fillings if you look after your teeth. But if you don't brush your teeth, you pretty much know, as I'm always saying to my children, your teeth are going to turn black and fall out. And that is literally what is going to happen to them. And it can happen more quickly if you eat a high sugar diet, or more slowly if you don't eat a high sugar diet. But we know that that's what happens. We do brush our teeth because we're in the habit of brushing our teeth. It's, socially acceptable thing to do. Yet looking after ourselves isn't ingrained into our society as healthy habits, essentially.
So how did you get from Australia to Spain. What did that journey look like for you, both on a personal level, a health level, and a professional level? What did that look like?
Yeah. So from Australia, I went back to the UK. So Australia was like a little working holiday for me. And I kind of realized that as much as I loved it, I was itching to get back on the career ladder in the UK, which is in hindsight kind of a little bit strange because I never finished. I didn't like carry on my career. So I went back, I did pediatrics, I started having children. And, I led a healthy life, but I wasn't super focused on health. I ate lots of vegetables. I did minimal exercise. I think when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have what I call fitness of youth. You can run and you can do things, even if you're not consciously training. I would cycle to work if I could, depending on how far I had to commute, or walk again. That would be my preferred thing. But often I had to drive to work. And then I had children. And long story short, we ended up moving to Spain, partly because, I always wanted to travel. And that was part of my reason for going into medicine. And partly because I got to that stage again, which was like, well, when is this going to happen? If you don't make it happen now, it's not going to happen. So we moved to Spain with my eyes wide shut. I thought I could just come here and work, but that didn't really happen. And then I had twins when we moved to Spain, and I found myself a mother in a strange country with kids, 4 kids under 4.5. And I turned, and it's lovely. On one level, it was, oh my goodness, I'm on holiday. It's fabulous. The sun, the sand, everything's amazing. But a holiday is partly a state of mind that, you don't have all of those work things to do. And so on another level, it wasn't holiday, it was my life. And somehow I'd lost my identity. So I turned to the internet to try and basically do something. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I started writing about how to look after kids under the age of 1. And in the meantime, I could see that my children were sort of developing picky eating habits, and that one of the things that I really used to see as a pediatric doctor was tummy pains. And I would always see these mothers and say, oh, the good news is this is constipation. You don't have to take any medicine. All you need to do is eat a diet high in vegetables. It's going to be so easy. It's going to be fabulous. And me thinking, oh, this is great. They don't need medicines. And this poor mother going, how do I do that kind of thing? And as a mother, I realized that actually it's not as easy. You present healthy foods and, I would do, for example, vegetables and pasta, and my kids would eat out the pasta and leave all the vegetables. And then one day, my 3-year-old sitting on the toilet, tears streaming down his face, and I'm mortified to find out that he's constipated. And, it was a bit of a wake-up call, really. Oh my goodness, my own children are constipated. And, I did a lot of work on picky eating and how do we teach children healthy eating. The good news is it's all about demonstrating it. That's also the bad news, because so many people don't demonstrate healthy eating. But, if there's one thing I can say, it is, if you lead a healthy life, if you eat healthily, your children are just going to copy that. And that was one of the reasons really why I transitioned into helping mothers, because a lot of them really was standing there going, I want my kids to eat healthily, but I don't really eat healthily. And that's a really impossible place to be in. So that was that a short enough story?
It's a good story. That social modeling that we do as parents, we're aware of it behaviorally, but so often we forget that our health choices are also being modeled to our children. So I love that you transitioned in that way, because it's creating generations of healthier folks rather than just focusing on the children. It really strikes me that it came out of a little bit of an identity crisis, because that's real,
Well, so I think for me, you've read my book, and so that I teach 4 pillars. And so the 4 pillars I teach are healthy eating. And, I pretty much had that down pat. I mean, we did change how we ate quite a lot. As I started looking into nutrition, I realized, oh my goodness, I actually eat quite a lot of refined carbohydrates. That was the normal. I'd been brought up in what I call the carbohydrate era, breakfast cereal for breakfast, bread sandwich for lunch, and then pasta or something for dinner. And that was standard for us. Luckily for me, my mum always had vegetables. So I think that was very protective for me, in that I just grew up with this habit of always eating fruit and vegetables. But so, as I say, I modified quite a lot, looking at all the information, that's such amazing information that's coming out in the last 10, 15 years. Pillar number 2 is exercise that lights you up. And COVID has been my friend there. I was active before that, thanks to my kids. I started swimming, but in the last couple of years, I've really increased the amount of exercise that I do, because I think those few weeks of being confined, we were confined in Spain, like we weren't allowed out of our houses at all. And it just basically opened my eyes to how amazing it is that you can move your body. And I now don't take that for granted anymore. I did back then, I can go for a walk. But then when it's taken away from you, you begin to see, oh my goodness, it's really difficult to get movement into your day when you're confined to your house. Pillar number 3 is delicious, healthy sleep. And then pillar number 4 is emotional wellness. And there's so much involved in that emotional wellness piece with the people I work with. Emotional eating, relationship with food, stress levels are really important. But going back to my identity crisis, that was really where I did a lot of work on my own emotions and realized that, oh my goodness, emotions don't fall out of the sky, that I had some control in how I turned up. I could see myself being this grumpy mother, essentially. I kind of had it all. I had 4 beautiful children. I had living in Spain. I had an amazing husband. And yet somehow I was grumpy and dissatisfied, partly because I was struggling with this whole, hey, I used to be a doctor and now what am I doing? Basically nothing. Well, nothing other than the whole mothering bit. But, I think it really just, I devoured every single self-help book I could get, and there's so many of them around. And it made me really start looking at how I see things and how I think about things. And I always think about it as like, you can spiral up or you can spiral downwards, and you have to lay this foundation. Things don't change immediately, but you have to start making small changes and then more small changes, and you build up until suddenly you get to this place where you realize, oh my goodness, my life truly is amazing. And I really have created everything I want to, including my own business and writing books and all of those things. And that I can do something new and different, but you need those tools. And so that's why I think that emotional pillar is super important. So that's, what I help my clients with. For me, it was a slightly different journey, but the tools and the emotions are still exactly the same.
Love it. I love it. So you and I both work with humans, primarily women, who are going through major transitions in their lives, right? The physical, the emotional, the professional, they're in that place, right? And you just discussed the 4 pillars, but what are some of the things that you think, what are, like, if right now, as we are talking, what are some quick, immediate suggestions that you can have for people who are feeling stuck and on the verge of making a big change?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think so many things spring to mind. One thing I think is really being open to this idea of you can create whatever you want, and whatever you choose to create is going to be amazing. So when I look back to, me giving up my career, I think a lot of it was, well, number one, not wanting to let go of that career. Like, I'd worked very hard for that career. I'd done so many exams, honestly, and I really enjoyed it. So I think part of that was not being ready to let go, but also part of it was that fear of stepping into, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a business person. I'm going to create a business, as opposed to, a business, a job is just handed to you. But once you can get to that stage of whatever happens, it's going to be amazing. And, this comes down to decision making, that humans do not like making decisions. We like to think we want to keep our choices open, but actually the human brain finds it really difficult to make decisions. And, you can see quite often that we get so wrapped up in the decision. Oh, is this the right decision? But one way of looking at it is, I'm going to choose chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream. And either of those options is going to be amazing. I'm going to really enjoy the chocolate ice cream, or I'm going to really enjoy the vanilla ice cream. It's not like, I'm going to love one, I'm going to hate one. I have to choose the right one. I think it's just this idea of you can make it awesome. And you can definitely make it awesome when you start to see the awesome in the small things of living. It's not, oh my goodness, I've got my super yacht and all of these things. It's the small things in life, holding your child's hand or seeing the sun, and just really, really absorbing how amazing our lives are and amazing things that we can do, and enjoying those. And, if you're sitting in that place going, I just can't see it happening, you can change and you can get there.
Yeah, it makes me think I had Lyme disease and it was chronic Lyme. So I was very sick for a long time and there was no cure in sight, right? One of those like immune system going haywire and nothing to do. And I couldn't hold a pen or a pencil and I was bedbound for a bit of time. And I just began by, and I had great medical care. I will say this. I had great medical care. They were throwing everything they could at it. But at a low point, just tasting something fresh every day and focusing on that taste, meditating on what felt good in my body, taking the time to really focus on, it was easy to feel pain. So I had to make a concerted effort to focus on what felt good in my body. And doing those small things, it sounds so small, and it was, and it didn't immediately cause an overnight shift, but it did allow for a little more space to keep making the next decision and the next decision and the next decision. You choose the chocolate ice cream, but then you choose the chocolate ice cream and you go for a walk on the beach while you're having the chocolate ice cream, and then you're watching the sunset and then you're feeling the sun. Like, things lead to things. And so I love that your exploration of making the next right choice for you, no matter how small it is, leads to the next thing. And that's not necessarily law of attraction. You're drawing in all the amazing things to you. No, it's that you are taking action and making choices in your life to spiral upwards, right? To spiral up.
Exactly. And I think, going back to that, once you've made your decision of what you want, one exercise I really love doing is getting clarity on what you want your life to look like. And I'm a very great believer in creating a vision of what you want. And it's almost like you're driving along the road. So you've created this vision of 5 years' time. This is what I want. And for me, when I'm talking to my clients, I'm talking about health and wellness. And, women say, I want to have a body that I'm proud of, and I want to be able to wear those clothes. And I want that inner confidence and all of those things, movement and just, it happening without having to think about it. So that's your vision for 5 years' time. And you want to keep that alive. And it might be that you don't 100% know what that vision is. So for me, thinking about, okay, I'm going to create a business. I didn't do this when I was thinking about it. So it's a tool that I use now. But I could have thought, okay, I'm going to create business in which I'm helping people, I'm working flexible hours, I'm creating transformation in people's lives, all of that kind of detail, without it specifically being, oh, this is the group that you have and you meet on Wednesday at this time, without all of those details, but just that idea. And so the idea is you've got that motivation that you're working towards, and yet it's like driving as well. You're looking at the distance, but you're also looking at exactly what's in front of the car, because you don't want to run over somebody who steps in front of you. And so that's like enjoying your every single moment that happens, enjoying this time that we have now, but keeping an eye on the future, because that's what you're working towards.
So helpful, so important, and also not difficult to do. Right?
Yeah.
It just takes focus. So, focus and accountability and
keeping going. But it's a useful tool to keep you going. And yes, I think accountability for any change that you want is really helpful. There's studies that show that it's really, really helpful. If you want to make changes, I always talk about the rickety bridge, and I think coming up with a new word, which is the chasm of chaos, like basically life happens. You're standing here, you want to make these changes, you want to get to the other side of the chasm of chaos, but the chasm of chaos always happens. And there's this kind of rickety bridge that you have to go across. And what happens on that rickety bridge is life, and you get pinged back to all your old habits and systems and routines. And that's when you go, it doesn't work, I'm broken. And I always say, no, you're fine. You've got a human body, you've got a human brain. This is what happens. This is how it's supposed to be. But yeah, people just end up going, okay, I've taken a couple of steps and I can't get across. And now I'm back where I started. But you just have to keep going, and you just have to keep going.
You talk in your book about acorn habits and oak tree habits. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why habits are important?
Yeah. So habits essentially are things that we do without thinking, and they are a double-edged sword. And the reason we have habits is because they're super efficient. So going back to, talking about how our brain makes decisions, making decisions is really energy. It uses a lot of energy for your brain, and we don't like to make decisions. It's really efficient for us to have habits. Like, can you imagine if you had to wake up every single morning and think, there's this toothbrush thing. What do I do with this? Okay, I just need to go and get the instructions. Okay, this book is I'm going to read a book and it's going to tell me how to brush my teeth. Now, if you had to do that every single day, you would probably never brush your teeth, and then your teeth would turn black and fall out. But that isn't what happens. We just do it without thinking. You just find yourself brushing your teeth. It's in your routine. You just do it once, twice, 3 times a day, however many times you do it. And so that's the great thing about habits. But the thing about habits is our brain doesn't care what habit we have. To our brain, it's the same whether you're brushing your teeth or sitting on your couch or going for a walk. It's just exactly the same. So it is great to have habits, but you have to have them intentionally. You have to choose habits that are going to serve your healthy living. And the great thing about that is once you've got those habits, you just live a healthy life without thinking about it. It's just like, hey, this is what I do. And so coming back to our kids, when we teach our children, when they develop these healthy habits, exactly like I said at the beginning, I grew up eating vegetables and that's just what I did. I didn't think, oh my goodness, I'm eating really healthily. I just ate vegetables because that's what my mother gave me and that's what I got used to doing. So sorry, I realized I've entirely forgotten what your original question was.
The difference between acorn habits and oak tree habits.
Yes. Okay. So then it's January the 1st and you decide, I'm going to make some new habits. My New Year's resolution is going to be, I'm going to walk around the block. And you are thinking about your habit and you're walking around the block and you're walking around the block and you're thinking, I'm doing so well. This habit is great. I'm really putting effort into making my habit. Now, by the second week of February, you've entered into the chasm of chaos again, AKA life. Life happens. And you've entirely forgotten about your habit, except your habit was never a habit. It was, this acorn habit. You were thinking about it the whole time. So it wasn't a habit. You were building this habit. It's not a habit until you look away and you forget that you're doing it. And then 5 years later on, you look back and you go, that New Year's, I did build that habit of walking round the block. I just entirely forgot about it, but I've been doing it now for 5 years. And so it's truly a habit when you stop thinking about it. And that's what I think confuses people is they go, I just can't create new habits. Well, you can, but you haven't gone far enough yet. You've got what I call this acorn habit and you've mistaken it for a proper habit, a big oak tree habit.
Yeah. And so your book is really designed to help people turn ideas into acorn habits, into oak tree habits.
Exactly. And another thing that I see, so the book has got habit trackers in it. And, one of the things that I see is our brains adapt so quickly. So you start off and you think, okay, I'm going to be really, really good. I'm going to create this new habit. So, for some of my clients, that might be, I'm not going to eat ice cream after dinner. And you think, okay, this is great, but I'm eating ice cream after dinner 30 times, every single day, 30 days out of the month. Fast forward 2 months and you're only doing it once a week. Now, that is a huge improvement on every single day, except our brains are designed to look at the negative things. And so you're there beating yourself up about that once a week that you're doing instead of seeing the progress that you've made. And, I can take a zillion different examples, but that is always what happens. Coaching session number 2, people always come with a long list of failures. And it's like, no, wait a minute. I know that you've been making changes because I've been talking to you all week and I know that you've done things differently. So why are you telling me all the negative things that you haven't done? Why aren't you telling me all? And it's just essentially human nature. This is what we do. We always focus on the negative. So that going back to the habit tracker, it shows you if you mark over every time you've done your habit, you can see that you fill up your pages more and more. So you can look back and go, okay, I was walking around the block for 10 minutes every other day. And now I'm going for 20 minutes every single day. That's a lot more than when I started off.
That's great. That's great. It's really helpful, really useful. And I'm excited to see what happens when people begin to make use of this book. And I'll put the link to it in the show notes. So with my clients, we really approach making significant changes in our lives by accessing or becoming aware of these 7 different paths that we use, or channels. Sometimes we call them paths, sometimes channels, sometimes ways to really creating change. And that can be a new fitness regime, I know that you are a proponent of a plant-based diet, or it can be something as big as launching a huge activist campaign, right? Or launching a new business. Can we take a rapid fire look at the 7 different channels, and you can let us know how they've influenced you as a change maker? Because you've made changes in your life, but your career changes are to help people change their lives. It's like exponential change going on for you.
Yes, this sounds fun.
Great. So we'll just do it rapid fire. So the first channel is emotional.
Oh, emotions. I've always loved emotions. As I look back on my life, I think for me, emotions have always been interesting. And I've always kind of enjoyed emotions. And I think that you should enjoy the good bits, the happy bits, but you should enjoy the sad bits as well. Like, that's what makes us human, basically, is emotions. I love this quote, which is, oh my goodness, let me get this right. We are emotional beings who think rather than thinking beings who feel emotions. And I think that really sums up humans, in that we like to think we're logical, but we're not really. We just do things because of emotions. And I think for me, from a personal level, the biggest thing that I have learned is I get to choose my emotions. I know not all the time, not 100%, but you can really influence how you choose to turn up. If you're feeling sad, sit and feel sadness for a little bit and then go, okay, I've enjoyed feeling sad and now I'm going to do something else. And I think for me, knowing that you can control your emotions, just think, if everybody knew that, I think it would just solve so many issues in the world.
Yeah, I was just talking to my daughter about this the other day. We were talking about how we feel that the measure of real health and contentment for ourselves is being able to feel the full spectrum of emotions without drowning in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's turn to the other side of that then, which is the analytical.
Yeah, no, analytical is something that I love. I personally love understanding how something works. And so I always think it's really good to take a step back and to understand what's going on, a bit like having explained to you how habits work, and realizing that what happens to people is they get stuck in this area. But once you step back and go, okay, I can understand this now, you can then make huge progress, because you can go, okay, I know this, like, it doesn't feel great and I feel stuck, but I just need to keep going and I'm going to come out the other side. So I always like to understand how things work, particularly with my clients, because then I can help them. But it's really useful to be able to understand what's going on so that you can go through the process.
Absolutely. The next one is intuitive.
Yes, that's another really fabulous one. And if people are really connected, I think that's amazing. It's something that I have to practice, being intuitive. Like, for me, what happens is I get this little whisper of an intuition, and then sometimes I ignore it. And then I realize you knew and you ignored it anyhow. So it's really allowing that to open up. My mom has this amazing game that you can play. It's like one of those card games, but it asks you the most ridiculous questions that you have no idea about. And the number of times my instinct is to say the right one, and then I don't, my analytical brain comes in and goes, oh, it's that one. So yeah, it's something that personally I'm working on, but I think everyone should learn to listen to their intuition. With
all of these 7 paths, we're going to be at different stages, at different points in our lives on them, and they do interplay. Just as you said that you can use the analytical to sort of titrate our relationship to emotions, right, to our emotional self. It's the same with intuitive. And sometimes we have greater access to it, and sometimes we have less access to it. We also live in a world that values, say, the analytical, and that operates on the emotional. so much that they often are much louder than the intuitive, which is that whisper. It's hard to hear a whisper when the drums are going.
Exactly. I think that's very true. And I think, doing things like meditation and taking time to just relax and do nothing or be in nature. I think when we have kids, we stop doing nothing. Before we have kids, I see my kids like hanging around all day and I'm like, what are you kids doing? And they're like, I don't know, they'll bounce a ball against a wall like 500 times. I'm just like, who has time to do that? And I look back to when I was a student and I would have, a free session. I would go and hang out with my friends. I wouldn't ever do anything, super productive in those times. Now, as an adult, I find, as a parent, that we have just this agenda, which is like from here to here to here to here, that we hardly ever take time just to do nothing. And I think it is something that we need to remember to do.
Oh, I agree. I think boredom is the biggest gift we can give ourselves these days. I really do. Hard to get. It's a big one. It's expensive. Boredom.
My son is constantly complaining about it. It's the Easter holidays now. He's like, I'm bored. I'm like, wow, what do you want me to do about it?
My mother-in-law used to say, there are never boring moments, only boring people.
I think it just means I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, well, if you don't know what you want to do, I surely don't know what you want to do.
Okay, the next path is spiritual.
I think for me, this ties very much into meditation and thinking about the universe. I have to confess, thinking about the universe scares me a little bit. When I think about the size of the universe, my brain just goes, yeah, no, it's not going to work, is it? It's like a big question mark. Just file this under I don't know. But I think it ties back to that intuition as well, and having some kind of guide or higher sense or something else. I don't know what. I'm not sure I answered that very clearly.
I think you answered it honestly. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the unknown. And spirituality, by its very nature, is sort of trusting in the unknown, that it is unknowable to us because we are finite in our understanding. Right?
Yes, exactly. And for me, my brain just goes, big question mark. But I think there is also another idea which goes back to this, I can make amazing things happen, but just having faith in, and it can be an external force if you want to be an external force, but that things are going to work out okay for you in the end. And obviously we all have a limited amount of time on the planet. So it's not like we're ever going to avoid death, but that during that time, I've got these amazing moments. And for me right now, everything is okay. I've got 4 children who are safe and I've got a house, and like, what more do we want? And I know that we've been through scary times. We've been through COVID, and I know a lot of people, thinking about political situations in the world go through much worse. But right now I'm safe, and that's amazing.
Yeah. Being in the now.
Exactly.
Being in the now. The next one is creative.
I love creative. And I think creative is so many, many different things. Like we think of creative as creating a picture or something, but it doesn't have to be like an object of art. It can be creating other things. So for me, I think about, I've created a space for my clients to come and transform their life. And that is creativity. And, doing podcasts, that is creative as well. I kind of love creativity. And this may sound a bit strange. The Orlena of 20 years ago would be like, what are you saying? But I find cleaning my house creative as well. I'm almost like I have to do a bit of backstory. I have just created my dream home, and it's taken me 5 years to do this. But, the same kind of thing. I put this vision out into the future of, I want my dream home, and we've moved into our dream home. And now I love going and cleaning the windows and thinking, wow, I've got this amazing home, which is perfect for my family. It's the right size for our family. And this is what I'm doing. I'm, sort of polishing it. I'm keeping this creation alive.
What a beautiful gift to yourself and to your family.
And when you come to the Costa Brava, you can come and see it.
I will take you up on that. The next one related to cleaning windows, physical.
Oh, I love physical. For me, I see people who have dogs and they go, oh, I have to walk my dog. And I'm like, wait a minute, what about yourself? Your body is made to move. And so many people say to me, oh, I don't have time, I'm too tired to exercise. And I think you've got this the wrong way around. exercise is what gives your body energy. And I think you need to find exercise that lights you up. Not all your exercise needs to light you up. My exercise that lights me up is swimming in the sea. The Mediterranean, as you know, is amazing to swim in. Oh, it is just in the summer. I see stingrays, I see octopuses, I see moray eels, I see these beautiful fish. It is just amazing. But I also go walking, and it doesn't light me up in the same way, but it is truly, beautiful at this time of year. It's all green and lush here. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but it is just about replenishing yourself when you move, and your body needs that movement. If we look at our analytical minds now, research shows that we need movement, and it helps us with, muscle strength and bone strength and heart strength, and, it helps keep our lungs healthy. So all of it, it's just so important. It's got a whole pillar by itself. It's pillar number 2. I recently had one of my really good school friends came and stayed, and I haven't seen them for years, literally like 2 years. So it was so lovely to see her. But, we've been friends since we were 9, I think. We used to play netball at school, and we would choose to be on the opposite teams. They didn't do sport very well when I was at school. Like if you weren't in the team, the school team for every single sport, then basically you didn't do anything. So when we practiced, she would be the goal shooter and I would be the goalkeeper on the opposite side, which basically meant we spent the entire lesson just standing next to each other, chatting. And that was my sports education, was like picking goalkeepers so that I could chat to my best mate for 45. So yeah, I think I was sports phobic, and I look back now and I think, I'm so heartbroken that that's how, now I understand how sport is amazing and it's part of leading a healthy life, but that wasn't what it was taught. It was taught as the school has to win. We're really competitive. School is going to, we show our prowess by winning sports. And that was it. And there was no self-care involved, no life skills involved. I think schools have changed a bit now, but yeah, I just kind of think it was the wrong reasons.
I was just very bad at sports. I was super uncoordinated and in my head. I was just a dreamy little creative kid who didn't really care about lacrosse, right? And then when I was a junior in high school, I had a fantastic physical education teacher, Kathy LeDuc. She passed away recently. So I've been thinking about her a lot because we had to play sports at my boarding school. We had to, and it was torture for me. I hated it, hated every minute of it. But tennis was one of the sports that I signed up to play. And she said, you can be the person who just hits the ball back and forth with your friend on the tennis court. You can sit there with your best friend and just hit the ball back and forth because at least you're moving. You're moving. And if that's how I'm going to get you to move your body, that's okay. It doesn't have to be about winning. And that was completely revelatory for me because it made it fun to have it be truly recreational and not competitive.
I would say now at the age of 47, I am physically fitter than I have ever been before. And I'm not competitive. So here they do lots of swimming competitions. And I just go, why would I want to do these swimming competitions? There's too many people in the sea. You're getting in my way. And I normally have this entire sea to myself and, 2 other people. In fact, if there's more than 5 people in my swimming group, I'm a bit like, there's too many people here. But, I don't do it. Well, I do it to keep fit. It's not that I don't do it to keep fit, but it's not a chore to do it. And also as well, you don't have to do heaps and heaps of grueling exercise. I do a 7-minute workout in the morning. I love my 7-minute workout. And I think if nothing else happens today, I've done a 7-minute workout. I've moved my body a little bit, but I always think it's really, really easy to leave a sedentary lifestyle. And, these days we're all at computers. It's so easy to not move your body at all. But the flip side is once you've got into the habit of it, it's really easy to move your body and enjoy moving your body.
And now we've reached the last one. And that's social.
Social is part of my pillar 4, actually. Human beings are social. Coming back to emotions and thinking about emotions and social beings, we have these things called mirror neurons, and you can see it playing out in your family. My children are highly, highly emotional and highly strung, I would say, and they express their emotions by screaming. And I think that's partly because I've got 4 who are so close together. but partly because they're sort of allowed to do that. But what happens is you have a child who's screaming next to you, who's upset and anxious, and you can be in a calm and beautiful mood. And then you start paying attention to this, without that sort of inner strength. And suddenly your emotions have taken on their emotions. And it almost sort of ricochets around the family. So yeah, social is amazing. And we need social activity. In fact, in the UK, they have a minister of loneliness because they realized that it's a big factor, particularly for elderly people, as people get more isolated. And it actually is a risk factor for being unwell.
That's incredible that they have that they have Minister of Loneliness. It is very sweet. It is very sweet.
I'm not sure what the minister does, but
I also think with social, one of the things that I do with my clients when they're taking on a project that seems a little out of reach, and it's fun when they seem a little bit out of reach, right? That's why we do them. That's why we reach for them. I have them look for people who have done some parts of that they can use as examples, that they can see how they behave, and hopefully that they can, sometimes it's parasocial, right? Sometimes it's someone of a certain status or notoriety who they recognize as being someone who's done something that they appreciate, and they never get to meet them. They can only bear witness. We're not engaging the mirror neurons fully there. But when they can sit down and talk and have a conversation like this, like talking with you and seeing you share about how you have become increasingly fit with time. And then if we were in space together, bearing witness to that and picking up on your energy in that way, it's a great way to go. So it's not necessarily just working towards the screaming children, picking up on the negative emotions, but also picking up on the adaptive, I won't say positive, but the more adaptive habits and choices too.
Definitely.
I would love to know, how can the listeners get in touch with you? How can they find you? Tell us about how we can get in touch with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for asking. So I have a podcast, which is Fit and Fabulous at 40 and Beyond. And I have an amazing Facebook group, actually, which is full of amazing people. And had you asked me a year ago, I probably would have said, I hate Facebook groups. But my Facebook group is amazing and full of amazing women. And of course, my book, which is available on Amazon.
Wonderful. Enjoy your swim. I'm a little bit jealous.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And one day when you come back to the Costa Brava, we can swim in the sea together.
That sounds marvelous.
Here are my key takeaways from this conversation with Dr. Orlena Kerek. Number 1, Dr. Orlena talked about acorn habits and oak tree habits. Take a look at your habits. How many of them have really graduated to oak tree status? And where are the acorns that you need to continue to cultivate? Number 2, when you feel like you're not making changes quickly enough, really take the time to note the progress that you are making to combat the negative bias. Number 3, sometime this week, maybe even today, or maybe even as soon as you stop listening to this podcast, take a few moments to just do nothing. Give yourself that space to silence the beating drums of expectation and give your intuitive self a little room to expand. Thank you so much for listening to the Pause to Go podcast. If you got something out of this episode, let us know. Share it with a friend, join our Facebook group, and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts if you loved it. If not, no worries. We want you to tell it like it is, and we'd love to have your input. If you want to know more about what I'm up to, you can follow me on Instagram at The Lovely Unbecoming or at my website, thelovelyunbecoming.com. Stay curious, y'all.